Good morning all, Excellency, Honorable Prime Minister, ministerial colleagues, friends, patriots of Guyana. Indeed, this is quite an outstanding day in the annals of our country, the history of our country that will be written about for years to come. So as promised, and to give fulfillment to the words of Minister Harman, who a few weeks ago said that before the end of 2017, the government will release the contract that was entered into with ExxonMobil and its partners Hess and CNOOC Nexen. Hess being an American company, CNOOC Nexen, Chinese national offshore oil company, which acquired Nexen, which was a Canadian company. So those three, Mr. Henson may speak about that a little later, those three have been awarded a license by the Government of Guyana to explore and develop petroleum resources in the Stabroek block. I just wish to say that when we assumed office, that is the APNU-AFC coalition in May of 2015, we did so days after there had been a significant find, as it was so described at the time by ExxonMobil as the operator. We later, in that year of 2015, went on to give definition to that significant find as it was then described, and concluded that the Liza field by itself contained a minimum of 800 million barrels of recoverable oil to a possible 1.4 billion barrels of oil. Thereafter, Exxon drilled a well known as Skipjack, which well turned up to be dry, and as anyone who is involved in mining and exploration would know, it is believed that if Skipjack had been drilled and explored first, it very well could have changed the dynamics, because Exxon may have concluded that the Stabroek was not a fruitful basin to explore. Drilling a well is an expensive business and can run to several $100 million per well. Thereafter, other wells were drilled, and we did have successive discoveries, and on each occasion I would recall receiving the news, feeling a sense of heaviness, and then I would pass the news on to His Excellency the President that, sir, there's been another discovery, and I would hear his voice drop as well, because it was another layer of responsibility that fell on our shoulders. So we have made discoveries, Government of Guyana and Exxon, at the Payara well, at a well that is known as Snook, and a well most recently known as Turbot. Together, and I can announce, I believe it is our right to let the people of Guyana know, together the reserves that are known in those wells to date approximate to about 3.2 billion barrels of oil. That is more than many, many, many countries in the world have. And it is significant that we know that figure. We can multiply that by a multiplier of 50, which is considered the base price per barrel of crude oil today. Guyana is entitled to 50% of that, together with a 2% royalty. I say something now about the contract. When government took office, one will recall that on the 26th of May, His Excellency was inaugurated. He was sworn in, of course, previously on the 16th of May of 2015, but on the 26th of May, the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela issued decree number 1787, which decree redrew, in a sense, the maritime borders, or purported to withdraw the maritime borders of Venezuela, taking in with that redrawing, or that purported redrawing, the Liza field and most of the maritime zone previously known to be Guyana's. So that is how this government started its work, and it is in that context that many decisions were made against that backdrop. So government took a decision, firstly, not to have an expansive review and renegotiation of the contract with Exxon. We recognized that Exxon had made a discovery. ExxonMobil was considered one of the top two oil developing and petroleum producing companies in the world. ExxonMobil was the only company that was brave enough to venture into our waters and to explore for oil, when many others either felt afraid to do so, and many others, in fact, one particular company in particular, was run out of our waters and its ship arrested and escorted elsewhere by a corvette. So we recognized that we had with us a company that, one, had made a discovery, had a binding contract with the government and people of Guyana, which had been signed in 1999, was brave and committed to developing the resource, had the capacities, financial and technical capacities to do so, and government believed that it should enter into a long-term, stable relationship with this company. We have received much advice from many sources, some of which we have dispersed, Joe, to use your term, and dispensed with, but some of it has been wholesome. And one such bit of advice was that we should, given our relative size as a nation with less than 1 million people, given our relative underdevelopment and our relative inexperience, we should try to stabilize our relationships. Rather than go out and court 15 and 20 companies to come into our waters and develop the resource, we should try to manage what we had discovered, build better relations with the company that had made a discovery, and make that a long-term objective. And to that extent, the model which Botswana used was the one that the international financial institutions recommended to us. Botswana, as we know, has made a discovery many years ago of diamonds. It chose to enter into a long-term relationship with De Beers, the diamond company, and of course there are other companies around, but it anchored itself and its national development with one company. And so it was the decision of this government that we would continue the agreement which had been entered into by the previous PVP Civic Administration, and that we would make minor modifications rather than enter into protracted long-term negotiations with the company. To that extent, we were able to raise some of the fees, and the slides that you will see will speak to some of those. We were able to introduce a 2% royalty where previously there was 0 royalty. Now, some people have said that the royalty should have been 10%, it should have been 20%. But I wish to make a few points about that. Firstly, there are different types of contracts. There is a production share or profit sharing contract, which is what we inherited in 1999. And there's also the royalty-based contract. We were already receiving 50% of the profits as an equal partner, having not sunk a single cent into the development of the block. We, however, decided that we would come up with a hybrid of that production share agreement and put a feature of a royalty on top of that. Many countries have either the production share or they have the royalty based. We decided that we would try to enjoy the best of both worlds. And were successful in convincing Exxon, even though there was no legal basis upon which a renegotiation could pursue, because there was no frustration of contract, no breach of contract. The only things that changed were a discovery and a change of government. But it was a binding, lawful contract which Exxon was entitled to enforce should we decide not to accept it. Bear in mind that countries near, quite near and far have tampered, have interfered, and in fact one country had an arbitration award against it nearby to the west of us, where it sought to acquire the assets of the very company ExxonMobil. So for strategic and other reasons, I'm saying, we chose not to enter into a full renegotiation of this contract. And so, based on our efforts and by our calculations, we can now receive on a daily basis when production commences in 2020, close to $1 million per day. So at the end of the year, Guyana will earn about $300 million, which is as a result of what some may determine to be a modest royalty rate, but it is significant because this is money that does not come from a grant or a loan or is not pursued, or the fruits rather from the pursuit from taxes. This is money that will come to us and accrue to us on a daily basis. So with that said, I'd just like to mention a few other things. One, we also determined that under no circumstances, and I thank Mr. Dennison for this as well, Commissioner of GGMC, that there will be flaring of the gas. It is common industry practice that there's flaring, and we determined that given the green approach and the commitments made by His Excellency, that Exxon would not flare the natural gas, which accompanied the find. I remember when we tested the gas, the flow, for a few days. Most people did not know this, but you have to test the rate of the pressure to determine quantum. An aircraft, I believe a Caribbean Airlines aircraft, headed to Tamari, reported a ship on fire in the seas of Guyana. It caused quite a stir between the Coast Guard and MARAD, and so we had to calm things down and say there's not a fire, it's just a flaring to test. So we've determined that we may flare for testing only, but we will not be flaring on a continuous daily 24-hour basis. Also, there has been much said about the size of the Stabroek block, and that the government, and yours truly in particular, has given away the birthright of Guyana. For the reasons which I've stated earlier, and the strategic importance of having this company develop the resource on our behalf, we sought to maintain the exact proportions of the grant that had been given by the PPP Civic Administration in 1999. We did not take a single millimeter, neither did we add a single millimeter to what had already been given to Exxon. So the claim about us giving away the resource and losing for it, I'm amazed at. Given the fact, as I said, that we will earn the value of the resources already about 160 billion US dollars, with Guyana being entitled to half of that, it is sometimes bemusing to understand why there's this clamor for more money when in fact we should be more concerned about how are we going to manage this resource. Being less than $1 million, how are we going to protect this resource? Because there are going to be others who will want to come and share it with us, sometimes not by choice, but by force. So those are the primary concerns of the government. How do we protect what we have rather than be going out? We're entitled to 80 billion, we want now 90 billion. We're less than 1 million people. And I believe one former, it was revealed last week, one former senior official of a neighboring state was on television saying that, you know, they're going to be like Qatar, they're going to be rich. And he was almost angry that Guyana was going to be wealthy. On a per capita basis, we're going to be that wealthy. So these are some of the considerations that led to our negotiations and discussions with Exxon. As I said, it was not a negotiation of the manner and type that we are accustomed to, where we sit and have long back and forth over every clause, but we did make some minor adjustments. In closing, I just wish to say that it is unfortunate that the opposition is not here. We did invite them in Parliament. I did say that an invitation would be extended, and we would expect that they would be present. They've chosen not to be, and I suppose that will be spoken about by them later on. But they know in the opposition, and others know, the reason why the 1999 contract was not revealed. We are being beaten up for, why aren't you revealing? But in 1999, they took a decision not to reveal contracts. It was in this very building when the then opposition sought to get more details of the Amila Falls project that they were invited into this building, into a closed room, to see just some pages of it, not the entire document. That was never made public. So this is a signal day in the history of the country. I am grateful for the time and attention that you've given, and I will join Minister of State tomorrow at his press conference to answer any more questions that may arise. But I wanted to give the context and the background to our relationship with ExxonMobil, and I thank you very much. Thank you.